The air crackles with tension.
Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, sits in her chamber, opulent yet suffocating. Her recent marriage to Claudius, her deceased husband's brother, weighs heavily upon Hamlet's heart.
He arrives, a whirlwind of grief and anger barely contained.
He confronts his mother, his words like venom, his accusations like daggers thrown at her conscience.
Caught in the whirlwind of Hamlet's fury, she recoils from his accusations.
She struggles to understand the depths of his pain, the poison that festers in his soul.
Hamlet unleashes a torrent of words, each syllable laced with his disgust for her hasty marriage.
He reminds her of his father's greatness, contrasting it with Claudius's villainy.
Overwhelmed by his tirade, tries to defend herself.
Her words, however, fall on deaf ears.
Hamlet's rage has blinded him to reason, to any semblance of filial piety.
He sees only the betrayal, the injustice of his father's death and his mother's hasty marriage.
The intimacy of the Queen's chamber becomes a battleground for their emotions.
Hamlet, fueled by grief and the need for revenge, pushes Gertrude to see her actions through his eyes.
Yet the chasm between mother and son seems insurmountable.
Their perspectives clash, their words weapons in a battle neither can truly win. Gertrude, shaken by Hamlet's accusations, tries to regain control of the situation.
She calls for help, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and authority.
Polonius, ever the loyal advisor, hides behind the tapestry, an unseen participant in this familial fray.
Hamlet's rage, however, cannot be contained.
He continues his verbal assault, his words echoing in the confined space, each syllable a blow to Gertrude's composure.
Such an act, he cries, that blurs the grace and blush of modesty, calls virtue hypocrite, takes off the rose from the fair forehead of an innocent love, and sets a blister there.
His words are a searing indictment of her actions, a mirror reflecting back her perceived transgressions.
Overwhelmed by his fury and guilt, shrinks under the weight of his judgment.
She begs him to stop, to cease this relentless attack on her soul.
But Hamlet is relentless, driven by the ghost's revelation and his own wounded heart.
Her pleas for him to stop only fuel his fury.
He sees her reaction as a confession, proof of her complicity in his father's murder.
The more she denies his accusations, the more convinced he becomes of her guilt.
Hamlet, lost in his righteous anger, has become a force of nature, a storm threatening to destroy everything in its path.
The tension in the room crackles, a palpable entity suffocating them both. Polonius, hidden behind the tapestry, finds himself an unwilling audience to this private familial war.
He hears Hamlet's accusations, Gertrude's desperate pleas, and the escalating tension that permeates the air.
Fear takes hold of him as he realizes the gravity of the situation.
He makes a fatal decision, a desperate attempt to save his queen from the prince's wrath.
A muffled sound, a rustle behind the tapestry, betrays Polonius's presence.
Hamlet, on high alert, mistakes the sound for Claudius.
Convinced that his stepfather lurks in the shadows, ready to silence him, Hamlet reacts instinctively.
He draws his sword, his every muscle taut with anticipation.
In a flash of movement, he plunges the blade through the tapestry, a cry of surprise echoing from behind it.
The tapestry falls away, revealing the lifeless body of Polonius.
His eyes stare blankly at the ceiling, a tragic testament to his misguided loyalty.
Silence descends upon the room, heavy and suffocating.
Hamlet, his hand still gripping the bloody sword, stares in disbelief at the unintended victim.
The consequences of his actions, of his all-consuming rage, crash down upon him with the force of a tidal wave. As I grapple with the horror of Polonius's death, a spectral figure emerges from the shadows.
My ethereal form shimmers in the dim light, a haunting reminder of the treachery that set this tragedy in motion.
To me, Hamlet's conversation with the apparition only confirms my worst fears. My son has succumbed to madness.
Father, I recount my actions seeking your approval, a validation of my murderous act.
But I have come for another purpose. Remember your true mission to avenge my murder and spare your mother from further harm.
The ghost's words hang heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the unfinished task that lies ahead.
Watching in terror as Hamlet speaks to the empty air, his eyes, wide with fervor, seem to look through me. My son, my flesh and blood, has descended into madness.
She searches for an explanation, a rational reason for his bizarre behavior, but finds none. All she sees is a broken man, consumed by grief and driven by forces beyond her understanding.
This is the very coinage of your brain, her voice filled with despair.
She attributes Hamlet's visions to madness, a convenient explanation for what she cannot comprehend. Her inability to see the ghost becomes a point of contention between them.
Mother, the ghost is real. It speaks of murder and betrayal.
But his words fall on deaf ears. Gertrude sees only a distraught and delusional young man, his mind poisoned by grief. This difference in perception, this fundamental inability to agree on reality, widens the chasm between them.
You choose passion over reason, betraying my father's memory with your hasty and ill-advised marriage.
Overwhelmed by his accusations and terrified by his apparent madness, I break down. I crumble under the weight of his words, my carefully constructed facade of composure shattered.
The appearance of the ghost and Polonius's accidental death mark a turning point in the play. The delicate balance of power shifts, the line between sanity and madness blurs. Hamlet, already teetering on the edge of reason, descends further into his self-imposed isolation. His actions, once calculated and deliberate, become impulsive, driven by a potent mixture of grief, guilt, and anger. Gertrude, now truly afraid of her son, is left to grapple with the devastating consequences of his actions. She is caught in a web of deceit and suspicion, torn between her love for her son and her loyalty to her new husband. The accidental murder of Polonius throws the Danish court into turmoil. Claudius, threatened by Hamlet's instability and aware of his own treacherous actions, will stop at nothing to protect his throne. The scene in Gertrude's chamber is a crucible, forging the characters' fates and setting in motion the play's tragic climax. It is a maelstrom of emotions, a pivotal point where love and loyalty are tested and where the boundaries of sanity are irrevocably breached. As the curtain falls on this pivotal scene, the audience is left breathless, dreading yet anticipating the inevitable consequences of this fateful night.